Another question. Right here in the middle. You were there.
Thank you. Maria Gleamore from Harvard School of Public Health. And it's wonderful to see this topic. I work on childhood roots of cardiovascular disease and stroke. Unfortunately, basic science does not exactly translate into policy. So I'm wondering if you can speak a little bit about what, all three of you really, what you think the best evidence for specific things that work, that we're maybe not doing or we should do more of, and then where, given the purview of what's feasible within a policy framework, what are the really critical uncertainties? What do we need to know in order to design policies that achieve what we all want to achieve to care for children?
Why don't you start?
So that's a very important question. I'll just give you my opinion on that. I mean, for starters, I think the greatest power that this science has for the policy world is to try to change the nature of the policy discussion. I mean, I think we all know that so much of the policy debate is a variation on, does the money go here or does the money go there? Or how many people can we serve now? How many fewer people can we serve because we have less money? And in the end, that feeds into, I think, a sense of futility that a lot of people feel and hopelessness because the problems are so complicated. The excitement about this new science for policymakers, and we've experienced that in states that have really taken this seriously, is it creates a new policy discussion that's kind of filled with the excitement of not fighting the same old battles that end up in the same old places, but begin to think about things in a new way that really do cut across party lines, and that most important, raise issues of what might we do differently with what are always limited resources. And it gets away from the study du jour. It gets away from, oh, a new study came out, so well, let's use it to either support what we're doing or not support what we're doing, and take this cumulative body of knowledge that's been built up over decades and say, it's really time to start thinking differently. It's time to start being more creative and being grounded in science. And you know, we've seen enough examples of this beginning. I mean, I think Roberto's comments are so important that the federal government can model certain behaviors, and it certainly has resources that can send to the states. But at the end of the day, it's at the state and local level that something's going to happen or not happen. And this is where we've seen the policy debate change, when you can bring people together from both sides of the aisle and think differently about problems that everybody cares about.
We have only a few minutes. Roberto, a specific on this question.
Sure. So three things. And again, I don't think there's any one silver bullet here, but there are a few things that can be done. One thing is to do more around home visits for our neediest families, for our most vulnerable families. I think we've seen strong evidence around how that's really helped child development, reduce maltreatment, help improve parenting. That's critically important. I think we can do more around broadening and growing and improving our network of infant and toddler specialists, mental health specialists, to work with our child care programs, to work with our preschool programs. That's very important. I think the other thing we need to do is make sure that we have really this element of screening and doing more around getting really universal screening. We need to move toward that goal. This is something that we've prioritized as part, again, of this Race to the Top program to say, let's try to have a goal of getting better health care and screening to more of our vulnerable kids earlier, and regardless of where they're spending time. And I think we're beginning to see states move forward on that.
Great. Bob, a few words.
Well, I think policies come from a variety of sources. Sometimes they're ideological, sometimes they're political, sometimes they're based on some unusual beliefs, and sometimes they're based on sort of an answer to a certain very vocal segment of society. But when we're talking about children, and we're talking about our children who are going to evolve into our future adults, I think that we find new partners. Pediatricians are finding new partners with economists who can explain the economy of healthcare to us. We're finding partners with business leaders who are telling us they need educated, healthy, young adults to enter their workforce. And I think as we develop these partnerships and these collaborations across different disciplines, and if we base it on science, then we have a real basis, if you will, for developing new policies, which aren't, this is better than that, or that is better than this other thing. What we're talking about now is, as Jack is telling us, to look at the science, to look at what we know now creates this development across the lifespan, and start paying appropriate attention to it. Nobody can disagree with that, because if we don't move in this direction, we have unsustainability, and that scares the living daylights out of me.
I'll give you a very concrete, specific example. In Washington State, a year ago, a process started where the people in the Department of Early Learning were trying to take these ideas and create a new way of building capacity for parents to kind of buffer their kids from stress by how they dealt with coping styles. And because other people were in the room, somebody said, well, it sounds like those kinds of skills that you're looking at as parenting skills are also the kind of skills that would make people more employable and be able to hold a job. And another person in the room said, well, if that's the case, then why don't we make this program that started to focus on parenting eligible for reimbursement to count for a TANF work requirement, because three different issues are being addressed by this same intervention. That's an example of one science affecting three different systems by some very simple change in what you do. And that doesn't happen if people have their meetings about how to set up an interagency agreement. It happens when they get together and say, well, what does the science mean for what I do? And it's amazing what magic happens when people come together and talk like that.
Well, I think this is a good note to end on when people come together. It talks about resilience for toxic stress. And I think this has been a wonderful discussion, and I want to thank everybody here. Particularly want to thank our panelists, Roberto and Bob and Jack. And I think it's a discussion we must continue. As I listen to this, I think it would be great for older people, too. Thank you all very, very much.